Welcome to this BVTV Trilogy, coming to you from the UK studios of BizVision. I'm your host, Malcolm Gallagher. This is episode 3 in the trilogy with Erik Wolf, Executive Director of the World Food Travel Association. Hello again, Erik.
Hi, Malcolm. Good to be back.
Sadly, this is the final chapter in our trilogy. I really do enjoy everything that you do. It's so much value you're bringing to the tourism and hospitality sector.
Oh, thank you.
But I personally despair that so many providers opt for the easy purchase from wholesalers instead of local sourcing. Now, local sourcing can reduce food miles, it'll support local producers, and it can increase tourism to an area. What would you say to those providers to convince them of the value to them of the extra effort of local sourcing and menu creation alongside that local purchasing? Oh, and how should they do it enthusiastically and with continuing commitment? And how can the World Food Travel Association help there?
Well, that's a short list there, Malcolm. It's almost like the list for Santa. I want everything. I think that businesses had a good run where things were easy, fast, and cheap, and things are changing right now. If you look at the semiconductor industry, or if you look at what's happening with mobile phones right now, there's a reason why a lot of the countries are banning things like Huawei and some of the other Chinese mobile phone makers because they're scared about competition. Or the semiconductors, you can't deliver cars now because cars rely on semiconductors and there's not enough of them out there. So what we're learning is that we need to bring back manufacturing to our own countries and not rely on the imports so much. And I think that the parallel lesson here is that we need to rely on local sourcing much more and do our part in supporting the local economy much more rather than doing everything from a centralized source. There was a director of food and beverage at a hotel in Portland, Oregon, where I used to live. And it was a hotel that was under the Hilton brand. And he was notorious in the company for fighting Hilton corporate headquarters in Beverly Hills, which wanted to standardize all purchasing, get the best price and have a consistent experience for everybody. And he fought them for quite a long time and eventually won that he was able to get a certain amount of his food and beverage budget to be used for local purchases. And he showed them that his banquet numbers were better, his guest satisfaction numbers were better, and the ratings were better on sites like TripAdvisor for the food and beverage that the hotel served. And so Hilton took notice and said, wow, we actually learned something from this guy. So that's the first lesson. The second lesson is that by purchasing locally, you keep more money in the community, and this strengthens the local community. People lament that everyone's leaving and going to the big cities where people struggle because the prices keep going up and so on. But meanwhile, other people are leaving the big cities because it's too much, too expensive, too much traffic, too much noise, and so on. And by purchasing locally and paying salaries locally, you can have as much as a 700% greater economic impact in your community, which is tremendous.
Wow.
And if you think about a big chain coming in, whether it's a big hotel or a big box warehouse store like a Costco type store, everybody in the community and local government always say, "Oh, this is great. We're getting a big whatever store, big Tesco down the road," and everybody says, "Oh, that's great. It's going to create all these jobs and so on." But the thing is, those stores send about 80% of their profits back to corporate headquarters, whether it is at a corporate headquarters in one country or outside the country, like in the US or the UK or wherever. That means that's all that's left is paying for a little bit of people's wages and perhaps a little bit of fresh produce that really can't be imported because it will spoil. So that's not a huge economic impact. So you're actually selling your soul to the devil when you embrace those kinds of businesses. And how are we going to change? Well, we're going to change by just doing exactly like what that director of food and beverage did. We're going to stand up and say no. We realize that there could be some benefits from centralized purchasing, but we're actually going to take a lot of this into our own hands. There is a honey producer down the road, or there's a cider producer down the road that I know. and they have the best cider or the best honey, and I could walk there and pick up the product, or I can drive, 5 minutes and pick up the product, and my guests rave about this. So why am I not going to offer that product rather than purchasing your centrally purchased honey, which, if you were talking specifically about honey, there's actually a lot of counterfeit honey in the world, if you can believe it. It's a lot of it is rice, honey flavored rice syrup that's imported from places in Asia. I know. I learned that one from Netflix.
Yeah.
There's a docu-series that they did. So I think that we really need to think back about the communities we live in and how we invest back in our communities, because otherwise it's going to become like Blade Runner, where we all live in these huge mega cities and everything is impersonal and done for you and organized by corporations. And that's not really the future that I think people want. This goes well beyond food and beverage tourism. This goes beyond this speaks to quality of life. This speaks to the kind of place that you want to live in. And will we improve those local food and beverage businesses, whether they're bars or cafes or restaurants? We improve them for the locals too, not just the tourists. So when tourist season ends, the locals can continue to enjoy those great products and maybe discover that cider or that honey that they didn't know came from just around the corner. So I think for these businesses to participate and to learn new ways of doing business, there's a couple things we can do. First of all, I would encourage them to speak to their local tourism office and ask their local tourism office to become educated and learn more about what they can do to showcase their destination's food and beverage. There's a couple of resources that we offer as well. We have a couple downloads from our GastroTerra community. One is crafting a sustainable culinary destination, and the other is helping food service recovery after the pandemic. So any of those restaurant, cafe, bar owners that are looking for ideas, they can get these from the publications section in our GastroTerra community. We also have a masterclass for chefs and food service professionals that can help them to understand the power of food and beverage tourism and what they can do, the small changes that they can make in their businesses to really yield bigger profits and greater customer satisfaction.
Brilliant, Erik. Thanks. Now, let me remind our audience of your URL, your website address, which obviously viewers you can see on the screen behind me. But for listeners, let me just spell that out. It's all the W's, worldfoodtravel.org, worldfoodtravel.org. Go there and find out more about Erik's tremendous activity and how you can broaden your ability on food tourism. I also suggest you sign up to be a free member of the GastroTerra community, and you'll be able to get those downloads that Erik just talked about. Erik is the author of Culinary Tourism, The Hidden Harvest. Here's my tip for your business growth. Watch the trilogy again and get your colleagues to do so. Resolve to make your differentiator along the lines of what Erik and I have discussed. Thanks, Erik Wolf.
Thank you, Malcolm. It was a lot of fun.